I died smelling of burnt flesh and betrayal, listening to my husband whisper words of love to my best friend over my hospital bed. Then the universe blinked. I opened my eyes to the pristine glass of our penthouse office, the fire alarm silent for exactly 10 more seconds. The memory of dying is not something that fades. It clings to your psyche, heavy and suffocating, like a wet wool blanket smelling of iodine and rot. In my previous life, I was the hero. When the devastating inferno consumed the 42nd floor of Aegis Capital's headquarters in downtown Boston, I didn't think of myself. I thought only of Liam, my husband, the man whose startup I had funded with my inheritance, the man whose ring sat heavy on my left hand. When the smoke had turned the hallways into a blinding, toxic maze, Liam had frozen, hyperventilating in the center of the trading floor. I had grabbed him by his custom Armani collar. I had dragged his dead weight through the stampede of panicking executives. I took a falling, burning ceiling tile to my back, searing through my silk blouse and melting into my skin just to shield his face. I shattered my collarbone, forcing open the jammed fire stairwell door. I carried him down 42 flights of stairs, inhaling fiberglass and toxic smoke, trading my lungs, my skin, and my future for his survival. And my reward? 3 months of agonizing existence in the Massachusetts General Hospital burn unit, 70% of my body covered in third-degree burns. My vocal cords were so damaged from the smoke inhalation that I couldn't speak above a raspy whisper. I was trapped in a mummified shell of bandages, fully conscious but entirely helpless. It was in that helpless state that I learned the truth. Liam didn't sit by my bed weeping. He sat in the corner armchair, scrolling through his phone, annoyed by the beeping of my heart monitor. And then, one rainy Tuesday night, she walked in. Rachel, my maid of honor, my supposed best friend since our days at Dartmouth. I couldn't move my head, but I could see them in the reflection of the dark window pane. I saw Liam stand up. I saw Rachel wrap her arms around his neck. I saw the passionate, desperate kiss they shared, inches away from my ruined body. "How much longer, Liam?" Rachel had whispered, her voice laced with cruel impatience. "The lawyers say her shares in Aegis transfer to you automatically once she passes. But if she lingers..." "The doctors said her heart is failing. The smoke damage was too severe," Liam had replied, his voice devoid of the warmth I had loved for 6 years. He sounded bored. "It's a waiting game, Rach. Let the monster rot." If she hadn't dragged me into that stairwell, I would have taken the private elevator. We would be in Paris by now. Instead, I have to play the grieving husband. The monster, that's what he called me. The woman who had given up her beauty, her health, and her life for him. "You should have just left her in the smoke," Rachel murmured, tracing his jawline. Liam scoffed. "If I had known she'd survive looking like that, I would have." The shock had triggered an alarm on my monitor. My heart rate spiked, then plummeted. My lungs seized. As the flatline tone echoed through the sterile room, Liam didn't call for the nurses. He walked over to the door, locked it, and stood at the foot of my bed, watching the light fade from my eyes with a chilling, relieved smile. My last sensation was the absolute, crushing weight of betrayal, and then a sharp intake of breath. My eyes snapped open. The sterile smell of the hospital was gone, replaced by the rich aroma of artisanal espresso and expensive leather. I gasped, my hands flying to my throat, expecting the thick, scratchy bandages. I felt only smooth skin. I touched my face, no scars. I looked down at my hands. They were unblemished, resting on a polished mahogany conference table. "Leora, are you even listening to me?" The voice sent a violent shockwave through my nervous system. I looked up. Liam. He was sitting across from me, looking impeccably handsome in his navy suit, his brow furrowed in that manufactured look of concern he used to manipulate me. Beside him sat Rachel, wearing the emerald green dress I had bought for her birthday, a pen poised over her legal pad. I glanced wildly at the digital clock on the wall. On the 14th of October, 2023, 2:14 p.m. My breath caught in my throat. It was the day of the fire. The exact day. "Leora, the quarterly projections are dropping," Liam said, his tone dripping with condescension. "I know you're the majority shareholder, but you need to trust me on this merger. If we don't liquidate the downtown assets by Friday, we're bleeding money. It all rushed back. The merger, the downtown assets. In the hospital, the investigators had concluded that the fire had started in the server room on the 40th floor, where all of Aegis Capital's physical financial records were kept. Records that would have proven Liam was embezzling millions into offshore accounts. He hadn't just been cheating on me with Rachel, they had been stealing me blind. The fire wasn't an accident. Liam had hired someone to set it, intending to destroy the evidence. The only problem was that the fire had spread uncontrollably, catching him off guard. I stared at him. The man I had died for. The man who had called me a monster. A cold, terrifying calm washed over me. The universe had torn the fabric of time to put me back in this exact chair. I wasn't just given a second chance at life. I was given a front row seat to justice. "Leora?" Rachel asked, leaning forward, her eyes flashing with fake sweetness. "You look pale, sweetie. Do you need a glass of water?" I looked at Rachel. I remembered the feel of her hand slipping Liam's Rolex off his wrist in the hospital, claiming it as a keepsake while I was dying. I smiled. It was a small, chilling thing. "No, Rachel," I said, my voice steady, unmarred by smoke and ash. "I'm perfectly fine. In fact, I've never seen things more clearly." I checked my watch. 2:16 p.m. The fire alarm was scheduled to go off at exactly 2:18 p. "Good, because we need your signature on these authorizations," Liam said, sliding a thick stack of papers across the table. "I've already bypassed the server backups for the transfer. Once you sign, the funds move, and we're secure." He bypassed the backups. He was setting the stage. I picked up the Mont Blanc pen. I didn't look at the paper. I looked at the air vent above Liam's head. "Do you smell that?" I asked softly. Liam frowned. "Smell what?" "Ozone and melting plastic." At 2:17 p.m., the first wisp of dark, acrid smoke curled out from the central ventilation shaft. At 2:18 p.m., the building's emergency sirens screamed to life. The sound of the alarm was deafening, a high-pitched, rhythmic shriek that shattered the quiet hum of the corporate office. Instantly, the strobe lights began to flash, bathing the boardroom in harsh, panic-inducing bursts of white light. "What the hell is that?" Liam yelled, dropping his pen. "Fire alarm," Rachel gasped. Standing up so fast, her chair tipped backward and crashed to the floor. Outside the glass walls of the boardroom, the trading floor erupted into pure chaos. Analysts and brokers were sprinting toward the exits, knocking over monitors, spilling hot coffee, trampling over each other in a blind frenzy. The smoke was coming up through the floor vents now, thick, black, and toxic. It smelled exactly as it had in my nightmares. In my past life, this was the moment my adrenaline took over. This was the moment I screamed Liam's name, grabbed his arm, and became his shield. This time, I slowly stood up, pushing my chair in neatly. "Leora, what are you doing? We have to go," Liam shouted. The facade of the confident CEO was instantly gone. His eyes were wide, darting around wildly like a trapped rat. "The stairs," I said, keeping my voice deliberately panicked, playing my part. "Liam, we have to take the fire stairs. It's protocol." "Screw protocol," Liam snarled. He grabbed his leather briefcase, the one containing the encrypted hard drives he was trying to steal. "There are 400 people bottlenecking the stairs. We'll be crushed to death." "Liam, you can't use the elevators in a fire," I pleaded, stepping backward toward the hallway that led to the emergency exit. I made sure to look terrified, helpless. "The shafts act as chimneys. The heat will disable the cables." "I have the VIP override key card," Liam yelled back, holding up a black plastic card. "The executive elevator has an independent power supply. It'll take us straight to the underground garage in 30 seconds. "Come on." He didn't reach out to grab me. He didn't try to pull me to safety. He just turned his back and sprinted out of the boardroom, heading in the opposite direction of the fire stairs. "Liam, wait!" Rachel screamed, hiking up her green dress and sprinting after him. "Take me with you, Liam!" I stood in the doorway watching them run down the chaotic, smoke-filled corridor toward the VIP elevator bank. I didn't follow. I didn't scream for them to stop. I just watched. I knew something Liam didn't. I had read the fire marshal's report from my hospital bed. The executive elevator didn't have a truly independent power supply. Its backup generator was located on the 30th floor, the exact floor where the fire had breached the mechanical shafts. The fire wasn't just below us, it was rapidly climbing the elevator column. Using an elevator in a high-rise fire wasn't just a risk. It was a guaranteed death sentence. I walked purposefully toward the fire stairs. The smoke was thickening, stinging my eyes, but I pulled a silk handkerchief from my pocket, soaked it with the water from my glass, and tied it over my nose and mouth. A trick I had learned too late in my past life. As I neared the heavy, fireproof door of the stairwell, I paused. Through the glass partition, I had a clear line of sight to the VIP elevator at the end of the hall. Liam was aggressively jabbing the call button, his face pale with terror. Rachel reached him, throwing her arms around his waist, sobbing hysterically. "It's going to be okay, Rach, I've got you," Liam promised, kissing her forehead. Even in the face of death, they were sickening, but a dark, cold satisfaction bloomed in my chest. In my previous life, I would have died of a broken heart seeing that. Now, it just proved that I was right to let them go. Ding. The stainless steel doors of the VIP elevator slid open. The interior was pristine, lit by soft LED lights, completely untouched by the smoke. It looked like a safe haven, a mechanical sanctuary. Liam dragged Rachel inside. Before he pressed the button, his eyes darted down the hallway. He saw me standing by the fire exit door, calmly watching him. For a split second, our eyes met across the smoky expanse. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look remorseful for leaving his wife behind to burn. He looked triumphant. He held up his briefcase, giving me a mock salute, a smirk playing on his lips. He thought he was leaving me to die. He thought he had won. "Goodbye, Leora." I saw his lips mouth. I didn't say a word. I raised my hand and offered a slow, deliberate wave. The smirk on Liam's face faltered just as the elevator doors began to close. Perhaps he saw the cold emptiness in my eyes. Perhaps he realized, a second too late, why I wasn't fighting to get into that metal box with him. The doors slid shut with a heavy, final thud. I pushed open the door to the fire stairwell and began my descent. The stairwell was crowded, hot, and echoing with the sounds of terrified people. But I wasn't rushing. I stayed to the right side, holding the handrail tightly. On the 38th floor, I saw a young intern, Sarah, a girl Liam routinely berated for minor typos, sitting on the landing, hyperventilating, her ankle twisted. In my past life, I had run past her, too busy carrying my husband's dead weight to stop. Sarah had died of smoke inhalation on that landing. This time, I stopped. I knelt beside her. "Sarah, look at me," I said firmly, pulling her arm over my shoulder. "You are not dying today. Stand up on your good leg. We're getting out of here." She sobbed in relief, leaning heavily against me. Together, we joined the slow, grueling march downward. By the time we reached the 20th floor, the building groaned violently. A massive vibration shook the concrete stairs beneath our feet. A dull, booming explosion echoed through the structure, followed by a sound I will never, ever forget. It was the horrific, shrieking sound of metal scraping against metal at terminal velocity. The fire had reached the 30th floor. It had melted the primary hoisting cables of the VIP elevator, and the emergency braking system, compromised by the intense heat, had failed. The sound of the elevator car plummeting down the shaft was like a freight train crashing through the center of the building. It rushed past the 20th floor core with a deafening roar, plunging into the dark abyss below. I paused on the stairs, closing my eyes as the vibration faded into a terrifying, hollow thud deep in the sub-basement. Sarah whimpered beside me. Oh my God, what was that? I adjusted my grip on her waist, my heart beating with a steady, unbothered rhythm. "Gravity," I replied softly. We kept walking. 40 minutes later, we burst through the ground floor exit doors into the chaotic, blinding light of the street. Fire trucks surrounded the plaza, sirens wailing, water hoses snaking across the wet pavement. Paramedics rushed forward to take Sarah from my arms. I stood in the center of the street, breathing in the cold, crisp October air. I looked up at the Horizon Tech building. The middle section was a raging inferno, thick plumes of black smoke staining the blue sky. I was alive. I had no burns, no shattered bones. Miss, are you injured?" a paramedic asked, rushing up to me with a flashlight. "Is there anyone else up there with you? Family? A husband?" I looked at the paramedic. I thought of the crumpled metal box at the bottom of the elevator shaft, burying Liam, Rachel, and the stolen millions in a tomb of his own making. "No," I said, my voice clear and strong. "I'm the only one left." The immediate aftermath of a disaster is never like the movies. There is no sweeping orchestral music, no dramatic slow-motion embraces. There is only a numb, ringing silence, punctuated by the crackle of police radios and the harsh glare of halogen emergency lights. I sat on the bumper of an ambulance, a silver foil shock blanket draped over my shoulders. Paramedics had checked my vitals, baffled by my eerie calm and resting heart rate. I sipped from a styrofoam cup of tepid water, watching the skeletal remains of the Horizon Tech building smolder against the darkening Boston skyline. At 6:45 p.m., a man in a rumpled beige trench coat approached me, flashing a silver badge. "Mrs. Sullivan, I'm Detective Arthur Pendleton, Boston PD, arson and explosives," he said gently, taking off his hat. "I know this is a horrific time, but I need to ask you a few questions about your husband, Liam Sullivan, and a Miss Rachel Cole. We have a partial manifest of the survivors, and they aren't on it." I looked down at the puddle of dirty water near my boots. I summoned a tremor to my lower lip, letting a single, perfectly timed tear roll down my cheek. "We were in the boardroom on the 42nd floor," I whispered, my voice trembling. "When the alarm went off, Liam panicked. He said the stairs were a death trap. He took Rachel and ran for the executive elevator. I begged him not to. I begged him. I buried my face in my hands. It was the performance of a lifetime." Detective Pendleton sighed heavily, crouching down to my eye level. "Mrs. Sullivan, please prepare yourself. The fire chief just gave me the preliminary report." The fire originated in the 40th floor server room, but the intense heat compromised the main structural shafts. The executive elevator's hoisting cables melted. Did it? Did it fall?" I choked out. "Yes," Pendleton said softly, "but it didn't hit the sub-basement. The emergency friction brakes, though damaged, partially engaged. The car wedged itself in the shaft around the 3rd floor. The kinetic impact was severe." He paused, looking at his notebook. "Recovery teams managed to pry the doors open 20 minutes ago. I am so sorry, Mrs. Sullivan." Rachel Cole was pronounced dead at the scene. "The medical examiner believes the sudden deceleration snapped her neck instantly." I squeezed my eyes shut. Dead. Rachel, the woman who had laughed at my ruined body, the woman who had stolen my life and my husband, was gone in an instant. A quick, painless death. Frankly, she got off easy. "And Liam?" I asked, looking through my fingers. Pendleton swallowed hard. He survived the impact. But Mrs. Sullivan, the elevator shaft acted as a chimney for the fire. The car was essentially trapped inside a blast furnace for 45 minutes before the fire department could extinguish the flames and cool the metal enough to extract him. He is currently being airlifted to the burn unit at Massachusetts General Hospital. It's very bad. A chilling shockwave of pure, unadulterated karmic poetry washed over my soul. He didn't die. He was trapped in the fire. In my previous life, I had shielded him. I had taken the flames so he could walk away without a blister. This time, by walking away, I had handed him the exact fate he had left me to suffer. The universe wasn't just giving me a second chance. It was balancing the scales with terrifying precision. "Take me to him," I said, dropping my hands. My voice was no longer trembling. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of legal and corporate triage. Before I even stepped foot in the hospital, I made a call to Richard Hawthorne, the ruthlessly efficient senior partner at my father's old law firm, Hawthorne and Pierce. By Tuesday morning, we were sitting in the pristine, smoke-free offices of the firm, looking over the documents Liam had tried to make me sign. "It's staggering," Richard said, adjusting his tortoiseshell glasses as he leafed through the recovered files. "The fire destroyed the physical servers, yes. But because you didn't sign the transfer authorizations in the boardroom, the electronic freeze remained active. Your husband's offshore accounts in the Caymans were pinging Aegis Capital's mainframes, trying to pull $75 million in liquid assets. The FBI's white-collar division, led by Agent Thomas Caldwell, flagged the unauthorized routing the moment the servers went offline. Liam hired someone to set the fire in the server room to cover his tracks, I stated, sipping my black coffee. He wanted the physical ledgers burned, and he planned to override the system with my signature right before the alarm went off. Then, he'd flee down the private elevator with Rachel and the encrypted drives. "And leave you trapped on the 42nd floor," Richard finished, his jaw tightening in disgust. The police found his briefcase in the elevator wreckage. The casing melted, but the solid-state drives inside survived just enough for forensics to pull the arson for hire emails. He paid a building maintenance contractor $50,000 to rig the electrical grid. Mrs. Sullivan, your husband isn't just facing corporate espionage and embezzlement charges. He's looking at first-degree felony murder for Rachel Cole's death and attempted murder for yours. I looked out the massive glass window of Richard's office, watching the busy Boston streets below. The sun was shining. The world was moving forward. "Freeze all his personal assets," I ordered, my tone ice cold. "Revoke his medical proxy. Place Aegis Capital under my sole emergency directorship, and fire every single executive he brought on board in the last 2 years. I want his empire dismantled before he even wakes up." It was raining on Thursday evening when I finally walked into Massachusetts General Hospital. The smell hit me the moment the elevator doors opened on the 7th floor, a sickening, sterile blend of iodine, bleached linens, and the faint, sweet, underlying scent of necrotic tissue. My stomach plummeted, a phantom memory of excruciating pain echoing through my nervous system. I forced myself to breathe. "I am whole," I reminded myself. "I am not the patient." I walked down the long, quiet corridor, my heels clicking softly against the linoleum. I bypassed the nurse's station and stopped outside room 412, the exact same room I had died in. I pushed the heavy door open. The rhythmic whoosh click of a mechanical ventilator filled the dimly lit room. I stepped inside and stood at the foot of the bed. Liam was completely unrecognizable. He was a mummified shell of thick white bandages and compression wrappings. Tubes snaked down his throat and into his veins. His skin, what little of it was visible around his eyes and mouth, was an angry, weeping landscape of red and purple raw tissue. 85% of his body was covered in third-degree burns. The doctors had amputated 3 fingers on his left hand due to the severity of the charring. His eyes were open, staring blankly at the ceiling. They were bloodshot and wide with silent agony. When he heard my footsteps, his gaze shifted. Through the slit of the bandages, his pupils dilated in shock as they locked onto me. He couldn't speak around the ventilator tube. He couldn't move his head, but the sheer terror and confusion in his eyes spoke volumes. He expected to see a ghost. Instead, he saw his wife, dressed in a flawless, tailored cream Chanel suit, her skin unblemished, her hair cascading in perfect, smoke-free waves over her shoulders. I walked slowly around the side of the bed, trailing my manicured fingers along the metal bedrail. "Hello, Liam," I whispered. The heart monitor beside his bed spiked. Beep, 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 beep. His chest heaved violently against the restraints. "I know it must be confusing for you," I said softly, pulling up the small vinyl armchair, the exact chair he had sat in while he kissed Rachel. I crossed my legs, leaning forward. "You thought you left me to burn. You thought I'd be ashes by now. But funny thing about elevators in a fire, Liam, they act like ovens." He let out a muffled, agonizing groan around the plastic tube in his throat. "Rachel is dead," I stated flatly. I watched his eyes for any flicker of heartbreak, but there was only selfish panic. Her neck snapped when the brakes caught. She didn't feel a thing. "You, on the other hand, well, doctor, Evans tells me you have months of skin grafts ahead of you. That is, if the infections don't get you first." I reached into my designer handbag and pulled out a sleek silver compact mirror. I opened it and held it over his face, forcing him to look at his own reflection. "Look at yourself, Liam," I whispered, echoing the exact cruelty he had shown me in another lifetime. "Look at what you've become." Tears streamed from his bloodshot eyes, soaking into the white gauze wrapped around his ruined cheeks. The FBI found the hard drives in your melted briefcase, I continued, snapping the mirror shut and dropping it back into my bag. They know about the Cayman accounts. They know you paid Marcus the maintenance guy to start the fire. The money never transferred because I never signed the paperwork. You have nothing, Liam. You are entirely, completely bankrupt. And the moment the doctors decide you are stable enough to breathe on your own, the police are transferring you to the medical wing of a maximum security federal prison. The monitor began to scream. His heart rate was skyrocketing, racing past 160 beats per minute. The panic in his eyes was absolute, suffocating, drowning him from the inside out. He was trapped in a ruined body, trapped in his own failures, realizing that the woman he had tried to murder had outsmarted him completely. Do you remember what you called me? I leaned in, my face inches from his bandaged ear. My voice dropped to a venomous, lethal whisper. You called me a monster. You said I should have just been left in the smoke. He thrashed against the bed, a pitiful, broken attempt to escape the truth. Well, I said, standing up and smoothing the skirt of my suit. It looks like the real monster finally got exactly what he deserved. I didn't press the call button for the nurse. I just turned my back on his frantic, muffled gasps and walked out of the room. As I stepped out of the hospital into the cool, cleansing rain of the Boston night, I took a deep breath. My lungs were clear, my future was mine, and for the first time in my life, I was truly, completely free. If this story of karmic justice sent chills down your spine, hit that like button right now. Leora's incredible journey from ultimate betrayal to absolute triumph proves that sometimes the universe doesn't just settle the score, it rewrites the game. Have you ever experienced a moment of instant karma? Tell me your story in the comments below. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who loves a dark twist, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping true life dramas.